What up? It's Connor Whitmore here again with another review for you, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about the new self-released EP from Sudden Death, Voyd Volume 1. Danny Howland, aka Sudden Death, is an LA-based producer hailing from San Jose, California. An artist with a versatile background, having played in jazz and metal bands, and then experimenting with genres such as electro house, hip-hop and big room house before establishing the Sudden Death brand in March 2015. Exploding onto the scene around a year ago with his Spelljam EP for Never Say Die's Black label, changing the spelling of his moniker in the process, releasing for labels such as Bass Weight, Savage Society and Borgore in the time surrounding that release, before returning to the Never Say Die label, the main imprint this time, with his Junk World EP, released in February of this year. All the while touring across the world, collaborating with Borgore, AFK and Subtronics to name but a few, being taken on by the Slail management, garnering hordes of fans along the way. The biggest of which apparently being Mr. Shaquille O'Neal. Another nice little fact for you about Mr. Howland: he is a man who loves to pull his trousers down. Not the pants though, he doesn't go quite that far. But trousers, yes. In England, pants mean underwear, by the way. Following Junk World, this is his second EP of 2018, an idea that caused a little bit of confusion, at least initially. With several dubplate teasers being released on SoundCloud under the name Voyd, people starting to think that it was a new undercover producer, until Sudden Death began to promote it a fair bit himself. Many speculating it could be a new collaborative project between Howland, Somnium Sound and others. And it was only once news of the EP dropped that everyone was able to come to the conclusion that it was indeed another Sudden Death EP. Which on first reaction I was very excited for. Several producers have put out 2 EPs already this year, and it's hardly been the case that the second one has been worse than the first one. And considering the quality on show in Junk World, I didn't have too much doubt that Voyd Volume 1 was going to carry on in a similar, if not the same, vein. And there are indeed many ways in which Voyd Volume 1 constitutes as a fantastic follow-up and successor somewhat to Junk World. Again, 5 tracks here, but a little switch up in that there are no remixes, and 2 collaborations as opposed to 1. Which I must say I was quite pleased about. Nothing against the Odd Profit remix in Junk World, or remixes in EPs in general. But it is nice when you get a straight up display of an artist's sound across an EP, albeit with help from a couple of others, in this case Murder and Samplifier. Now for me, the music works best here when the heaviest parts are fully fleshed and packed out. The music's so unbelievably present that it's genuinely hard to put down, to extract yourself from the grip it has on you. We get this in the opening track Castles, the first drop of which is momentarily spacious, a delay comprised of squelchy growls and vocal shouts, before bam and we get the first sizzling hit of Sudden Death's booming, pulsating, vibrant dark sound. It's grisly, it's primal, it's earthy, propelling you forward as it swaggers across the track, an impactful and fruitful blend of sounds. One sound, however, that I must say I'm not too sure on is the synth layered over the top, which is slightly misleading and distracting. Could have done with something slightly less abrasive. The double drop being equally as frazzling, if not more so, mind-numbing bass with heaps of intricate percussion, oozes, whines and screeches galore. I do feel like he could have stayed with some sections for a little longer here. It comes across as slightly directionally unaware as a result of this. However, its force is never lost, it really does just rattle throughout your head. It's inescapable, getting under your skin to nestle and bubble away. Preparing us, however, in no way for the second main drop, which pummels the listener just as hard yet with a completely different approach. This predatory, pounding, out of nowhere release that attacks everything in its path. Really lovely pace to it. Splicing the drop with these breakdowns which undeniably disrupt the flow, but overall add to the manic, malformed nature of the track as a whole. The other track in this EP that truly grips me on the dubstep front is the third song Behemoth. Starting the filth with these chunky, saturated sounds in the build, sautéing your brain until it's brought back into focus with some emerging claps, until we are suddenly stopped in our tracks by a dramatic halt, before this fantastic little bleep bloop effect, cutesy and so neatly executed. All of which comes before the main drop, a succession of cascading cutting effects, before again the main sequence slams in out of nowhere. This chugging bass that is simple but plugs away well with a host of surrounding noises, journeying through the track. I can feel the bite at this point, but not quite enough, an extent to which it could have been fleshed out more, but this understanding is quelled as soon as the progression arrives. Exactly what you would hope he does with the track, he does it. These low-end, outer-worldly growls that twist and turn, enveloping the listener in this unremovable acidic coat. It's taken up an octave and the surrounding sounds increase, but again I think these sections could have been longer, their impact more enduring. But as if that wasn't enough to melt your mind once that section finishes, the second drop gives us more of the same with the delivery slightly altered. All the synths are more alert, gliding effortlessly over the beat in this skittish way, the sounds repeated in this jumpier format. And with these two tracks in particular, the first and third, it's in a way not the dubstep that gives them their pizzazz, but the stuff that props the dubstep up. I've touched on it already, but the percussion is what really makes these tunes pop. The snares, the claps, the hi-hats are all vital in fleshing out his sound in the moments I've discussed thus far. Really aggressive with lots going on, but still so clear and refined. Everything can be heard, nothing gets lost at sea. It's madness. But obviously, in talking about these two songs so extensively and effusively, it becomes clear that I've omitted the other three, and that's not without reason. My main drawback with the second track, Rise, being these dreary up and down notes that Howland gets straight into from the introduction. Not the most pleasant listen on the ear. And although the beat in the main part of the drop is extremely solid, the vocal notes carry on in the same dreary way, quite uncomfortable really. I enjoy the shimmering stuff here as well as the furry, fuzzy sounds in the progression, the slight changes in the second drop as more is added in. But overall I find Rise to be a bit more jarring in its essence, and it comes across as quite short, structured in a simple manner sonically, unusual for Howland some may say. Perhaps it could have been used more as an interlude before the final track, swapping places with the fourth tune, Gates of Hell, alongside Murder, which I also can't quite feel the force of because of one particular sound, those high-pitched yoys that have a real vivaciousness to them, but not enough meat. This huge drawn-out tractor sound is seemingly on hand to save the day in the progression, a stealthy collection of sounds that all cohere very well at this point. But overall, my lasting impression is those yoys, their playful, scything reintroduction in the second drop, not quite enough to supply the thwack that this track needs. The fifth track, Break 'Em Down, I'd say I actually enjoy considerably more than the previous two discussed, but in a completely different way to the first two discussed. The dubstep is relatively bare, with sweet interjections of sound firing at you one after the other, more space filled over time as everything ricochets off each other more and more. And the progression is this fantastic bringing together of swiping wubs and rapid fire notes, both sections being present in the second drop also, but it's the breaks in this track that really are the dubstep's main selling point. Mostly taking shape in these fluttering screechy sounds and echoey vocal gasps, the importance of which cannot be understated for providing contrast from one sequence to another. It's a real hurricane of sounds, this one, and I know Howland coherently amasses sounds throughout in Voyd, but it's here that I feel the art lies most in everything coming together. Resultantly, however, despite amassing such sounds, in comparison to Junkworld, I don't think the ideas are as strong overall. The previous EP having many more distinctive things to it, from riffs and leads to the rave culture feel of the intros and builds. It's present in Voyd Volume 1, but not as much. Not to mention the dubstep, which in Junkworld I feel is punchier and more musically aware, catchy to the point that in my review of Junkworld, I found myself impersonating a lot of the sounds from it, because of how riveting they are. He seems to be concentrating on sound more than idea with this EP, trying to refine his style more than provide 5 distinctive, memorable tunes. In Junk World, all 4 tracks of his have extremely infectious leads, melodies, riffs, whatever you want to call them, getting you fully engaged from the start and into the builds, and that's not so much the case here. Voyd Volume 1 maintains the huge, metallic, acidic rhythm vibe, once again taking underground dubstep to a new level, but in terms of ingenuity, the wow factor is lacking in comparison to its predecessor. But I mean, in saying that, it's still a tremendous EP. Paradoxically, it becomes problematic being so good because you set such a high standard. It may not be exceptional, but it's still brilliant. Highlighted perhaps not by whole tracks, but certainly by a myriad of flashes that really light up this EP from start to finish. I love the opening introduction and build in Castles, classically dreamy sudden death to start before a radio signal build turned thumping EDM banger. Not forgetting the breaks before the drops in this track too, a stop-start vocal falling over itself, preparing us in this really unexpected, clever, effective way. The tribal drums to start Behemoth still have a mechanical feel to them as if they're starting up, but generally so plump and vivid in their delivery. The intro and build to Gates of Hell is great, the mystifying landing on a new planet curiosity, followed by the plodding rhythm beat and disconcerting alien sounds. There's nothing so beautiful as death. I also love the intro to Break 'Em Down, like driving over hot, crumbling coals, the 80s-like, Prodigy-inspired notes in the build with the quivering drums. So purposeful. Also, the way several tracks fade out here in their outro is a welcomed motif, an unusual thing for dubstep, as if it's telling a story. I mean, this is only Volume 1 after all. And although there are other brief instances of things I'm not too keen on with this EP, they really are pernickety beyond what I've mentioned already, and are more reflective of the extent to which I feel I need to analyse this work because of how much I respect it, not only for its complexity in and of itself, but also for its place within dubstep music at current. For me personally, it may go on an up and down trajectory in that I like tracks 1, 3 and 5 and not 2 and 4. But in saying I don't like a couple there, the quality of sound in those 2 tracks is still leaps and bounds ahead of near everything else out there. What's more, it's also easy to separate this from everything similar to it on a style level, because his is so distinctive, less so when he collaborates, but even then, it just does still feel like a Sudden Death EP, it's unmistakably him. This compelling blend of Euro, pop, trance, ravey, synths and dubstep that, at points, is as fervent as intense as you're gonna hear today, and that's saying something. Intense can be deemed as overwhelming, but here I mean completely and totally immersive, almost creepy in its ability to become part of you when you're listening to it. Furthermore, it's just so well put together. Some of the ideas don't carry as well as others, but in terms of dubstep being a craft, you're unlikely to find many better producers out there at the moment than Sudden Death. So unique, genuine and organic is his sound in drawing together such widely different influences. At times, as I've said, the cohesion isn't quite there, but the ambition can never be faulted. I mean, I've really had to narrow down what I'm saying just to get this review to this length. The variety and detail is ridiculous. And though I may not like it as much as Junk World now, who's to say I won't grow to love it just as much in the future? The hype and praise for this EP has been off the chart. Is it really as good as everyone is saying? Is it ahead of its time? Am I potentially missing something? At the moment, I'm not so sure, but let me know the extent to which you agree or disagree with me on this. I'm excited for a new level of appreciation to be unleashed with this EP. But I'm not just going to sit here and say that it's all of these things because other people have, because I don't think that yet, and I'm sure he'd respect that. To be honest, once I got to my 2nd, 3rd and 4th listens of Voyd Volume 1, I found myself enjoying it more and more, and that could happen with every new listen. We also must not forget that he released this independently, A truly incredible feat, as my boys Subtronics will explain simply and perfectly here. So props to Mr. Howland for that. Now in terms of my favourite from Voyd Volume 1, then I think I would have to go with Castles. An emphatic opener with my favourite drops of the bunch, a distinctive sudden death opening, multitude of different sounds throughout, a captivating and seizing way to introduce the Voyd series. And in terms of recommendations, if you enjoyed this EP, then all the acidic dubstep lot from past collaborators of his, Somnium Sound and Yax, to audio producers like Guillotine and Basic, and then others such as Dub Loads, Graphite and Ecraze. And so that is that for another review on the Nawtystep channel, this time of the new self-released EP from Sudden Death, Voyd Volume 1. Thank you very much, and as always, for tuning in. Be sure to leave a comment with your thoughts on Voyd Volume 1. What did you guys make of it? Which track is your favourite from the 5? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, then be sure to give it a big old thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, hitting that notification bell along the way so you can be notified.